Yo, yo, what it is, what it do, what up, Frontline? So happy to be back with you again. Shout out to the greatest to ever do it, my boy, oh, young Jigga Man. You know what I mean? And so if you disagree, you can put that in the chat too, but y'all know what it is. Jay is the GOAT. Yo, it is really a pleasure to be back with you. We always are so grateful anytime you choose to spend any amount of your time here with us, with Community Frontline, as we try to do what our charge is, and that's to bring information to the people that we know that will be uplifting, that will be educational, that will be informational, stuff that we really can use to be able to advance ourselves and do right by ourselves. So, with that being the case, I'm Q Phillips, Executive Director and co-founder of Community Frontline. Tonight, I am joined by my brother, El Presidente, the president and co-founder of Community Frontline, Dante Williams. Dig, say what up to your peoples, man.
Hey, what up, Frontline? Hey, let's have some good conversation and provide some good information tonight. Looking forward to it.
Yes. Yeah, indeed, indeed. So, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And in Community Frontline, we try to make sure that we do our part in highlighting the fact that that is the case. And so, we got somebody that is very much a part of Community Frontline tonight that's going to be able to drop knowledge for us like she always does. But let me introduce you to these two queens we got on deck. So first off, we got our sister, Latasha Jackson McDougle's in the building, representing Cheryl's voice. Latasha, say what up to your people.
Hello, everyone. Good evening.
Indeed, indeed. And then we got somebody who's new to the Frontline platform, but is definitely not new to Fort Worth. This sister is a bad sister out here representing, helping us out in the legal field, doing what she's doing. She's an attorney here locally. And she also happens to be running for family court judge. Now, Community Frontline does not endorse any candidates. I'm saying that for Derek Carson. So in case he watches this, he doesn't have a heart attack. But we do love our girl, Crystal Gayden. Crystal, what up? Say what up to your peoples.
What up, Frontline? Thank y'all for having me.
Indeed, indeed. So we are definitely appreciative of Crystal because she, between running and winning.
Hey, Crystal over there jamming. She got that music in the background.
You know what I mean? But,
we need to be where she at.
You know what I mean? She out there doing it. But yeah, between everything that she's been doing, she really was hopping out of one meeting, still willing to be able to jump on here. So we are just so grateful for your time. So she's in the public, y'all. So y'all be patient if you got to mute a little bit or somebody trying to come up and holler at her and all that good stuff, right? Yo. So, like I said, with domestic violence, like I said, particularly with us at Community Frontline, we understand the severities that goes along with it, and we understand how that is affecting our community. But we have to further that conversation. We have to make sure that conversation stays at the forefront. So we brought in the heavy hitters very much on purpose to help us to kind of examine it and to be able to see what's going on in that particular sphere. So starting us out tonight, Latasha, I just want to open up the floor to you, really just to kind of talk about who it is and what you do, and really let us know a little bit more about Cheryl's voice, because we always want to make sure we're uplifting the work that you're doing in the community through your organization.
Okay, well, I'm a native of Fort Worth, Texas. I've been born and raised here. By the time I was 18 months, I was orphaned and raised by my grandparents. I actually witnessed my father kill my mother and then kill himself. Back then, in 1984, there were not a lot of resources for us children. It was just kind of like a checklist system. And the fact that I did have great grandparents who was able to, care for me, they literally came in and saw that I had my own room, I was taken care of, I had clothes, I had this and that. That's pretty much it. No one was talking about the word childhood trauma didn't even exist back then. No one really realized the depths of what transpired with me. And I didn't realize the depths of what was transpiring with me. And so I share that to say that there's so many kids who have similar stories. Either they witness abuse in the home, or they've actually, in this year alone, we've had about 20 domestic violence homicides in Tarrant County. So we have a bunch of children that are left behind dealing with the same thing. And so that is part of my journey, is not only sharing my story about how to overcome that and the importance of that. But also, I named it Cheryl's Voice because my name was Cheryl. And when I did the investigation and discovered everything that she tried to do to get help, I realized that not only was she a hero at a very young age, 17 by the time she was killed, but she also saw that, hey, I need to get out of this for my daughter. I need to make sure I can protect her. And she was diligent with that. And so now I want not only her story and her voice to be heard, but I also want other children who are in those situations or parents who are in those situations to be active and involved, knowing that there are resources right here, plenty of them. Everybody's talking about trauma counseling now, that they can use, they can activate. And if they're not sure, I got a call today by some lady who somebody heard my story and just called me and was like, I feel alone. I'm trying to get divorced. And what do I do? And I'm like, this is who you call. This is what you do. That's what we do. We connect people with those resources that are right here. And educating them with that. And so you guys know, I mean, I love Community Frontline. I always talk about, y'all are in my little promo video. You know, I talk about, because men, I love the fact that you guys are not just talking about it today. This is something that you stand, walk alongside of being actively involved with violence against women and being against that. And y'all have done that since day one. And that's huge, because Black men are unfortunately the ones who are taking our sisters. And so for you guys to take a stand and say, hey, this is not okay. If you're frustrated, let's talk to your brother. Let's sit down and do that. Y'all do that every day. And I'm a witness to that. I always tell people that. And I appreciate the work that you guys are doing. And so Cheryl's Voice loves that communication and that partnership, because together it takes both of us to be able to make those changes on a regular basis. In addition to that, I also work for criminal courts. I'm a criminal courts case manager working with the offender. A lot of my speaking engagements this year have been really talking about the offender and how we're holding them accountable and how it's hard to hold them accountable. And I started recording some of those intakes so people can really see what we're dealing with. Because a lot of times, you know, you see a person, they're well dressed, they're well put together, they, you know, and you're thinking, oh, it was just an accident. It was just, and then when you talk to them and I'm sitting here interviewing them, they say one thing in front of the judge, in front of the attorney, but then they say something totally different behind the scenes with us. And they're like, she was crazy, she was drunk. I'm like, oh, I guess every single victim on my case that I have a case on is an alcoholic, I guess, you know. And so it's like, this is not making sense, not adding up. And so me and the other caseworker started breaking these things down and saying, you know, one, we're going to hold you guys accountable. And then two, we're going to make sure that we're sharing with the community what's really going on behind the scenes so they can be proactive with that.
Indeed. No, that's dope. Thank you so much for that. And I'm glad you even mentioned about your work in the courts, because that's a perfect transition over to Crystal. So, like I said, yeah, absolutely. So Crystal is definitely, like I said, she's an attorney practicing here locally. Like I said, and then involved in the family court, even to the extent of running for judge within the family court. So Crystal, just to you, just kind of what's your lens when it comes to this? Because you're seeing this as you're practicing law, you're seeing victims, you're seeing abusers, you're seeing these things happen. Kind of what's your take and what do you see from your lens as far as when it comes to domestic violence?
So in my practice as a family law attorney, protective orders are a matter that I on often. And so I get to see both sides, the side of the victim and then the side in the suit, the respondent or the perpetrator, so to speak. And so as an attorney, a hired attorney, you are put in a situation where you can't be judgmental, right? It depends on what side hired me. And so I can be an advocate for the victim, or I can be an advocate for the perpetrator. And ultimately, as an advocate for the perpetrator, my job is simply to ensure that the letter of the law is followed throughout the prosecution of the case. And so oftentimes people have come up to me and say, well, how dare you? How could you represent? And here's the thing, you know, you guys have probably heard this. There's three sides to a sword, right? It's going to be their side, and the truth. And ultimately, the court probably will never get to hear the truth And so my job is to ensure that when that case is presented to the court, that it's presented in a manner that follows the letter of the law, and that whomever I'm represented, their version is presented. And so I get to experience both sides of the equation oftentimes. And then of course, it being elected, I would have to hear both sides, and I would be, bound to listen to the facts of the case and ensure that both sides have presented their case in a manner that would be conducive to whatever they're presenting, right? Oftentimes, if you can present a case where you can show that family violence occurred, then the ruling is going to be similar. And then there are other times where you can see vindication, you can see a setup, and it's the court's position to make sure that they weed through a lot of that to get to the bottom of it. And so sometimes I'm just in a very difficult situation depending on who my client is.
Yeah. So I teach in the criminal justice department at TCU, and when we literally were just having this conversation in one of my classes about, as we got to prosecutor and we got to defense attorneys, kind of asking the students, what if, and in this case you weren't saying this, but I was even asking them, what if you knew someone was guilty and you got the case? Would you still be able to represent that person, right? And so it was a lot of conversation about, oh no, I never could do it and this, but it ended up getting back to what you were talking about, is that regardless of guilt or innocence, there's a process that we're trying to make sure where justice is served. And right. So even someone guilty has a right to counsel and has a right to be represented in the court and to make sure the balls and strikes are happening accurately in there. And it's ultimately up to a judge, to be able to decide those. It's just, even with you saying it just brought back the conversation of about guilty or innocence as far as someone having the right to be represented well.
Right.
No, absolutely. So real quick question we have in the chat already for you, Tasha, is Cheryl's voice only in Tarrant County? So where do you go?
No, I guess at this point in my career, I'm considered a national speaker. I get requested to go all over. So I don't think I said exactly what Cheryl's voice does is provide workshops and education on domestic violence, sharing my story. There's several different topics I get requested to talk about, whether it's teen dating violence as it correlates to sex trafficking, whether it's healthy relationships, healthy boundaries. I have a workshop coming up this weekend called He's Married, Sis, teaching women how to background check these guys online, how to online date, the importance of, making sure you have safety and protection for yourself. And if you have kids when you're dating, tons of different topics that I cover. And I do that anywhere. As far as our community giveaways, where we give away anything from hygiene products to iPads and like MacBooks and all that stuff that we give out, that is for Tarrant County residents. And then our bear drive, I get bears sent. I got some bears last time sent from Europe. Somebody sent me some bears from Europe. So it depends. So when we have giveaways, I do try to narrow that to Tarrant County because we have a need here in Tarrant County. So I want to make sure that I'm filling that need just to the residents here. But as far as the workshops and the education, I'm pretty much, if you invite me, and I will be there to do that.
Absolutely.
I do want to add to what Crystal was talking about. Very true what she's saying, because like I said, a lot of the defendants, so the diversion program is for first-time offenders. And so they go with their attorney and the judge, and they say one thing, they're Mr. Perfect and Mrs. Perfect, because I have women too. They're perfect. And then when they come to me, sometimes the attorney will come to me and say, oh yeah, this person, you're not gonna give you a problem. They're fully accountable. And I get them, and it's a whole nother person that I'm looking at. They're saying, and then they will actually tell me, because they've already pled guilty and they already know, like, hey, all I gotta do is take these classes and do X, Y, and Z. Well, that's what they're thinking in mind. All I gotta do is do this, and then I'm free. I can get this taken off my record. But what they don't realize is that I'm gonna hold your feet to the fire. And so they think I'm gonna lie here to the attorney and the judge, and then when I get over here, I'm just gonna I'm gonna say, yeah, I did it. I did this and I did that, and it's like, or they try to lie on the victim. And so it's a lot that I have to unravel, and then make sure that they go to counseling and make sure they do all these things, because my biggest goal is to make sure that they at least by the end of the program, they're decided to be accountable and decided to make real change for the protection of those kids and the protection of the victim. Or if they left the victim and they're with somebody else, you know, I try to put that in place. I'm like, you don't need to be in a relationship right now. Let's talk about working on yourself. So me and the other case manager are really working really hard to try to get these guys and girls who are arrested for domestic violence for the first time to make real change. And our recidivism rate is going pretty good, but it's not easy.
Sure. No, absolutely. So, you know, so I want to start our conversation off here. I'll start with you on this, Crystal, but then I want to hear from Latasha and Dante, actually, because, you know, like I said, even with us, you know, one, working in the sphere we work in just with people, but even just in our own families, in our hood, people around, I mean, this is prevalent, like everywhere. So we're having these conversations. So I guess what I want to chop it up about a little bit is that, you know, so we hear about, or we see, or we witness, or it happens in our family where this domestic violence case happens, whether it's the man, whether it's the woman, whatever the case may be, the violence happens. But then the person wants to stay with the person that just abused them in this way, right? And so, you know, of course, not in all cases, but we see these cases where it happens like, nah, let's get you help. Let's get you out of there, or whatever the case. And yet the person wants to stay. So, you know, it could be the legal hat, it could be just the woman or man hat, it could be whatever hat y'all want to put on. But why is that, right? I want to dive into that a little bit about what do you hear, or what do you see, or what are the things that people are saying as to why, even though it's clear it happened, we know the other person is guilty, you got the bruises and scars, yet you don't want to go to where you want to stay. I'll start with you, Crystal, and then we'll go around.
What I've seen in my practice is a fear of separating yourself from the relationship. There is a reliance there, whether it's a healthy reliance or not. It's the fear of being alone. It's the fear of embarrassment. Sometimes we put ourselves out there as if we have this cookie cutter relationship, that everything is good, right? And for people to see the behind the scenes, you don't want to step into those shoes. And so it's simply a fear of being able to move forward, separate, being unsure of how you're going to be able to maintain financially, because usually in a lot of those situations, the perpetrator is the one that holds the financial resources. And so what are you going to do if you walk away from that type of relationship? So just in my practice, it's simply a fear. It's what I've seen. Embarrassment, lack of support. Oftentimes people say, you know, I got your back. Well, do they really have your back when you absolutely need them? And so being able to recognize that, and I'm sure that's probably going to come with some type of counseling, which I'm not versed in, but being able to recognize that there is a dependence, whether that's healthy or unhealthy, and identifying a narcissist behavior. That's a word I've heard a lot in my practice as of late, narcissist. And I don't know if people really understand the definition of that, but just to be able to recognize a controlling nature, controlling in how you move, how you sleep, what you eat, where you go. You can quickly identify that type of behavior early on in a relationship. And so don't get me on my soapbox about recognizing red flags, so to speak, in relationships, but definitely a sense of fear on separating yourself from the relationship, and what are you supposed to do to move forward. And I'm sure, Latasha, you can talk about the resources that are out there and available to victims on helping them, you know, process through and get some resources and some support on separating themselves from the toxicity.
Yeah, so one, we're gonna get you on that soapbox in just a little while, because we do want to talk about the red flags. But no, thank you for answering that the way you did. And so, Dante, I want to bring you in there, and then Tasha can kind of put a bow on it as well. Like, wow, man, I know we've had these conversations. I know we've had family members, you know, we've had people just in our communities we've grown up in, people who are still around us now, that they don't want to leave those situations, even though we can see what's happening with them. I mean, so what are you seeing on that end, bro?
You gonna put me in the middle of both of them. Yeah, I appreciate
that.
That's
all right. Tasha cleaned up for you, man.
Yeah. Go get ready. So now, man, so I think, so a lot of what Crystal said, and just to add to, I would say just not wanting to be alone, right? So a lot of people stick and stay because they feel like, I mean, like I said, it's a fear of being alone, right? So you said fear, so I think of just being alone and not having someone else, or that person making them believe that they're not worth anyone else, or just a mental mind, I'm gonna say, screwing that some men and women do to a person in that position to make them feel like I'm just not worth going or being with anyone else other than the person I'm with. Um, like I think that's a huge part, and then especially within our communities, black communities specifically, and if we're talking about women, just the work, right? Like growing up and understanding like their value. A lot of times value is diminished, and that's men and women, but definitely with women. I mean, we've seen that, right? So I believe and know, like that's one, just not understanding a person's value, right? And then from a man's perspective, I feel like one, we don't, and hopefully Latasha and Crystal, you guys can give us some numbers on kind of maybe percentages on what men look like when it comes to domestic violence, like what's the percentages of men and women and stuff like that. But just from conversations, we've had and other things, I think men stick around for not wanting to be viewed as less than a man and not wanting it to get out that they are being abused. And also, sex is probably huge in that. If sex is a factor in those situations, it's a lot of things like that where I felt like, yeah, you're just gonna stick with it because the sex is good, and I ain't trying to look like no punk and say that you are in here beating on me or abusing me, type of deal. So that's my 2 cents on that.
No,
Latasha, clean me up.
Well, but one, you did ask about stats. So statistically, 1 in 3 women are victims of domestic violence and 1 in 4 men. And you're probably like, wow, I didn't know it was that close, right? There are a lot of men.
I know it was that close.
Yeah, there are a lot of men. And then now you also have to consider that, whether they're in a relationship with a woman or a man, they're still victims of domestic violence, right? So that number, that's why it started increasing as well. So, but there are a lot of men who are victims, and usually when the women, because I have women on my caseload and they're harder to be accountable, but that's not a story. Anyway, usually neighbors or somebody call the police, and they don't call the police because they feel like the man is being abused. They call the police because they hear the commotion and they feel like the man is abusing the woman. And when the police get there, they're like, this woman is wearing this man out with his bat. Anyway, so the question you ask is, why does she stay? And to be honest, I hate that question because it's not about why she stayed. It's about why is he abusing? And the real the appropriate answer, I guess, to that, because there's tons of reasons why they stay. Y'all all named most of them really, and there's tons of reasons why he's abusing. But at the bulk of it has to do with unresolved childhood trauma. When you start talking to both sides of the equation, they both have witnessed some type of dysfunction growing up, or even if they don't remember, you start asking the mom, hey, how was your relationship when you were pregnant with this person? More than likely, it was some type of toxicity or they were being abused. And now you have your answer on why that person is the way they are. Women tend to want to stay in a situation because they remember Mr. Hallmark Channel. He didn't start out as, this abuser person. He was great. He was nice. He did things that people didn't do for her. She didn't know what love was or even what it looks like until he came along and swept her off her feet. And so now what she's hoping is, can I get back to when it was good? Perfect example is, what's love got to do with it? Y'all saw how that went back and forth. I was not always that bad. And a lot of it, she made excuses for it because of his drug use. Drug use is not an excuse, just like alcohol. It's one of the things I deal with offenders. They're quick to say, well, I was too drunk. Drunkenness does not make you an abuser, buddy. There are people that get drunk and pass out or go to sleep. Doesn't mean they go home and beat up everybody in their house. And so we have to kind of change that narrative and say, okay, typically victims stay. there's also Stockholm syndrome and all these things that go on in a victim's mind of why they end up wanting to stay, because in their mind, they're really hoping that they get back their family. They get back to a place of peace. They get this good person that they had when they met him. So now we have to focus on, why is he or she being abusive? And that's when you start discovering that they have things they need to work on and resolve. And so that's the answer.
No, that's greatness. And I truly appreciate what you did there when you talked about, like you said, you hate that question, right? Because of the narrative that comes along with it. So from a frontline perspective, that's something we do in our police education realm. It's kind of what you just did with the domestic violence question of why did she stay, right? The same thing, because we see so much education of, we got to go into the schools and tell the young people, when you get pulled over, this is what you got to do. Well, I mean, sure, but why would you talk to the cops about what you need to be doing when you pull somebody over, right?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly right.
It's a different narrative, right? You
exactly.
know what I mean?
Like, why do I got to learn how to put my hands and do all this? For what?
Right. So no,
they need to learn how to respond to me when I'm being pulled over. I get pulled over all the time.
Absolutely, right. So no, absolutely, that's greatness. So yeah, so Crystal, pull that soapbox out, because you did exactly where I definitely wanted to be able to go next. I do want to talk about some of those red flags that we need to see. I mean, and it's one of those things that I know for me personally that I take it for granted that people know what these red flags look like, yet then you get in a situation with someone who's in an abusive relationship or is being abused in some way, and they really didn't see, whatever it is that I was able to, like, man, you didn't see that, he said this, she said that, but so I don't want to take for granted that people know what red flags really do look like when you need to be seeing what's up in your relationship. So yeah, Crystal, I'll start with you. And again, we'll kind of just chop it up about that a little bit. What are some of the red flags that you're seeing and that we need to be looking for in these relationships?
Okay, so Q, I'm probably about the realest person okay? I'm just gonna shoot straight from the
No, go with it though. No,
look, the red, you can say what you want to say as far as not noticing or being aware of the red flags. I think more so that is a blinder that people put over them, over their eyes. People want the relationship to work. So ideally, right? So when you meet somebody, right, like you first initially are attracted to them. And in most women, we've already put ourselves at the altar when we met you, right? We already at the end of this dating period. He's gonna marry me. This is how the proposal gonna be. This is what I look like. So that's your bondage right there. When you have this conversation, right? And you talk about, he done been in and out of relationships. It's because he ain't found the right one yet or whatever. And if you find yourself asking additional questions at some point in time, those red flags are going to come out. People really are going to show themselves on thank you. Okay. Thank you. Sorry about that, y'all. So people give themselves and present themselves a best character of themselves when you meet somebody, right? I forget what they call it, but then you sit down long enough for somebody and you'll begin to notice the truth. So as a woman during this whole dating thing that we do, you have to be intentional about asking the right questions, right? Don't jump to the conclusions and let them answer the question in its entirety. Don't answer the question for them. And in due season, in due time, a person will show you who and what they really are. Remove the blinders, right? And that my soapbox spiel is essentially women find themselves being fixers. So even when you see the red flag, you think you're the one that's going to make him a better man, right? He ain't found nobody till he found Crystal, and Crystal going to make him a better man. That is not your job. That is not your job to make this man a better man. And you know what? I don't even want to be that particular way in terms of just saying the man as if the man is always the perpetrator. It goes both ways for the men. Like, y'all, we can put it on y'all real thick, real smooth, and we got some issues behind us. I represent many victims who are men, like alpha men. And you can find yourselves in a situation where you can be the victim. And so it's just
You know, you told alpha
You can
men
find
just be
yourself
men who are hyper masculine, not men of
Nope.
alpha phi for fraternity
Yes,
incorporated.
okay.
Because
Let
we
me
don't
fix
do
Ice
that.
that.
cold
Let me
Nah,
fix
brothers.
that. Not,
Is what he
out
talking
there.
about.
no,
He talking about
no,
ice cold brothers.
no,
Dante love that. He's gonna smile. Like,
never,
yeah, talk about the
never,
alpha. Talk about
never. Yes, the alpha trait, and that
yes.
trait can be found in a woman as well. And so I represent those types of individuals, and you'll be surprised that they oftentimes find themselves in an abusive relationship. And it's simply because we have refused and ignored the red flags. So it's not about my inability to identify them, because we've all been equipped with the ability to identify things that don't sit well with spirit. If you got a rumbling in your spirit, go with your gut feeling. Go with your gut feeling.
Indeed. Indeed. So yeah, Tasha, those red flags, what say you?
Absolutely. And I will say, I see a lot of offenders, and I have never had anyone that was incorporated, that was a part of any fraternity. Not yet.
Right.
And that speaks volumes for,
Sure.
what you guys stand for, in my opinion.
Thank
Not
you.
saying, just saying.
We'll
make you feel a little
take the little W.
better. Oh gosh, red flags. That's all I talk about. That's why I'll be talking about this weekend. But with some of the things I educate women to do, especially when online dating, because that's kind of like the way of the world now. And it's so easy to really kind of get caught up with the texting and the, men, they'll say all these great things and present themselves as whatever. But the question really becomes, like Crystal says, ask those essential questions. If this person is telling me that every single last relationship he had, this woman she tries, you just one of the most unlucky men in the world, sir. You are the common denominator. I'm at high risk. I realize that, because as a victim, child witness, I am at high risk. I'm either going to be the abuser, or I'm going to be, that's what statistics says, or I'm going to be in an abusive relationship. So I have to be very cognizant and careful about how I move and date. And so when I see someone that is kind of like all the exes of this and not interested, you could be telling me the truth. You could just be that unlucky, but I'm not going to risk it. Next. And then you have the ones who, social media. If you meet someone, ladies or men, look at that person's social media, what they're posting. Because, for instance, one guy, he sent me, I get so many people in my DMs, it's ridiculous. And this guy sent me this message, and I said, let me look at his page. And he had a shirt on that said, bitches be tripping unless I push them. And most people thought that was funny. But in my mind, I'm like, why would you even buy that? I mean, as a man, why would they even be funny? He has daughters. So that's you're hiding in plain sight. You're actually telling me. And he had multiple posts that were about like, oh, if I found out a man was in my girl's DMs, I got something for him. He got a gun, like one of them memes or whatever. They will post these things. And to be honestly, there are a lot of women. I'm a part of this like little Christian group, dating group online. And that's where I get a lot of my research for my presentations, because I look at that and a lot of women laugh at it. Oh man, you got to have a sense of humor. And I'm like, that's not a sense of humor. He's telling you, like Crystal said, you see that this guy has some things going on with him, and you're making a decision because you're lonely. So we have to make better decisions. And I say the same for men, making those decisions of what's toxic and what's not. Why be with a woman that's cussing you out and she can't sit down and have a conversation? That's one of the first things I tell a guy when I meet him. Is like, communication is important to me. If we can't talk like two adults, I'm not doing the yelling and the cussing and the throwing things at each other. If it gets to that point, we're not in a relationship, buddy. It's a done deal. You have to set those boundaries about how you're going to communicate. If she can't talk to you as a grown man without humiliating you, cussing you out, calling you out your name and all those things, then y'all need to have a different conversation, which is, where's this relationship going? And so if more men set that boundary, women will start making those changes. Because I was asked today at the Women's Center, they were talking about a lot of girls are being more violent to boys. And I said, really have to talk to the boys about setting those boundaries, because girls follow what they feel is going to work, right? and I mean,
People do. So that's real.
and so if the boy is saying, say, I'm gonna tell my mama said don't do da 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 da, I don't talk like that. If you can't respect me, I'm not. And so she's gonna say, oh, like, that ain't gonna work. But if she feels like he's feeding off of that and allowing it, she's gonna keep breaking his phone and doing all this crazy stuff. So yeah, it's tons of red flags. Looking at the social media, looking at how people say things, like Crystal said, asking those questions is important. And background checking. Anytime somebody, oh, can you call me? Sure can. Let me look you up first. And I look them up. Long history of, and those are the more scary ones, because they see that I'm an advocate of domestic violence. And they feel like in their mind that if I can get her into a situation and trick her and show her that, hey, I'm Mr. Hallmark, and trick her into this web of lies, I've had the ultimate win. So women, we have to be careful. Men, we have to be diligent and having those conversations and setting those healthy boundaries.
So real. Dante, anything on the warning signs, brother?
Now you want me to go last. Put me at the front. Put me at the beginning of these conversations. But no, I would just add, and I'm surprised Tasha didn't say it. So I think trust, right? Like if a person is asking you all the time where you going, where you at, who you with, yeah, that's a red flag. Like, what we doing? Why is this? Why are we doing this day one, week one, month one? And really, why are we doing it at all? You know what I'm saying? So I think that's a red flag. And then, someone always trying to figure out kind of like, what do you want, right? Like, what do you want, so that they can fulfill that need of the want, but never really finding out really who you are, kind of who they are. Like for me, that's a red flag, because it's not necessarily about what I want, but just be you, right? Just be you and do what you do, and let's see kind of where things go from there. So yeah, I think those are two outside of kind of what they already hit, that are just some red flags to be looking into.
Yeah, trust and communication is important for sure. Absolutely. You can't do me with the where you going, who you with, them kind of questions. And
I would say pay attention to the relationship that they have with their parents, right? Or their siblings. Do these people even have friends? Usually, you run solo. You have a lot of estranged relationships. The number one thing I look at when I'm dating is, how do they treat their mother? Right? Because that's truly an indication of probably how they're going to treat you. And so, if they mama this and they mama that, and my mama ain't buying that, we got to figure out, why that relationship is there. And that would be, like you were saying, Latasha, just that childhood drama, childhood issues that they've gone through, which are a precursor potentially to a healthy relationship as an adult. And not to say that, that's going to be the end all be all, but what steps have they taken, if any, to address that childhood trauma? Exactly. And counseling is real. Like, in our demographics, in the Black culture, we're gonna pray this away. Now, everything can't be prayed away. We need to go get some help to address these issues so we can have healthy relationships moving forward. But that's my soapbox again. I'm gonna put myself
on mute. Very true. You got to set those healthy boundaries and communicate, and also, therapy. You got to. In our community, we are getting better though. I will say in the Black community, we are getting better with going to therapy, especially men. So my therapist is a Black man, and it's very hard to find a Black male social worker, but he's amazing. And he actually started a separate kind of coaching with men. He was telling me the other day, like, he has so many men. He says, I'm just amazed by how many Black men that are coming through my doors, either married or single, and they're dealing with their stuff. And I'm like, so happy to hear that in the city, Black men lining up to go to therapy.
That's encouraging. That really is encouraging to hear, because we know the stigma that's been placed on our community, and so the fact that that's beginning is very encouraging for real. So I mean, and it kind of alludes to and leads into kind of what I want to talk just a little bit about here as well is, can someone change? So you're in this relationship, someone, they were being abusive. They did the thing. We know it happened. They really did abuse their mate, their partner. We talked about somebody sticking it out and everything. Can someone change if they've exhibited that behavior already? Tasha, we start with you.
Yes, they can change. I have some really good success stories of people that started out in our program that was kind of, I didn't think they were going to do well at all. And then they get to the end, they're like made huge changes they may not be with the victim anymore, but they're really focusing on themselves and making all these changes and, trying to be a better father or mother. So I have seen those changes. Yes, that's with anything, right? I mean, people can make changes. I personally have a zero tolerance when it comes to, a criminal background, domestic violence background, but I do acknowledge the fact that yes, people can make change. I will say that people can turn away from that and really get the help that they need. I've actually met some guys who are actively in therapy and then openly admit that they, fell into the repeated cycle of what their father used to do and was extremely abusive, and now they are actively making those changes because they don't want to do that. And so I think that's great. And men are, and actually I know one guy who was, and Dante met him when I had a summit, great guy, Theo, and he publicly shared his story about what, how he was just really, kind of going from woman to woman and being abusive. And now he's a great guy. He's active in the community. He has a wife, never been abusive to her. They have 20,000 kids together. Like, he's doing amazing. And so that's one person I know. I'm like, wow, that really helped me do the job that I do from meeting him and seeing that change can happen. So yeah.
Yeah, straight up. And Dante, I was gonna let you speak to that first, but Tasha was ready. I already saw it, man. Sorry. So now you gotta be in the middle again. What you think, man? Can someone change if they have exhibited this behavior of committing domestic violence?
Yes, I'm gonna answer that. But I want to answer. So I think Crystal, you responded to one of the comments about pushing somebody to post a status to social media. Yeah, that's a red flag per Crystal, per me, per Natasha, I'm sure. That's a red flag. And then Pam says, also be careful of stereotyping men and women as crazy women. Yeah, Pam, all y'all are crazy though. Just FYI, I'm just playing. Don't get me. I'm playing. Sorry. Don't take me out.
Those are the thoughts and views of Dante Williams, not the thoughts and views of Community Frontline.
But that's real though. That's real. Putting
so I mean,
people,
if you want to speak to that real quick though, Crystal, and then Dante, I will let you answer that part about the change. But yeah, so when they say, what do you think about pushing someone to post the status of the relationship on social media? I know you said red flag, but you can elaborate a little bit on that, Crystal.
To me, that's just a sign of possible insecurity, right? If we're using social media as a form to validate a relationship or to secure somebody's loyalty, we move. So I'm sure at some point in time it would be, appropriate or whatever. But if someone's we having a conversation often about my status on social media, we probably need to rethink. In my opinion, I'm gonna have to rethink that relationship.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Absolutely. I'll add to what Crystal said that.
Yeah.
Y'all my brothers. Y'all know, y'all don't see me even no pictures with nobody on my social media until I get a ring finger, and I still probably won't, because I give so much of my life publicly, and so there's certain things that I want to protect, and certain things I'm not putting out there. So if he feels some type of way about that, then he got other issues, to be honest.
No, absolutely. So Dante, yeah, you can answer the question about whether someone can change if they exhibited this behavior already.
Yeah, so I think so. I mean, kind of like what Latasha said, I think anyone and everyone has the ability to change, right? If the circumstances are right. But I would also say, like, if the victim of that person who's changing like I would kind of like, I mean, Tasha said, like be zero. Like I'm not willing to really offer up a whole lot of extra opportunities for change. Like go change and be that with somebody else.
Yeah, you gotta
You know what I'm
change.
saying? Like,
You gonna be a changed
like
person
I
for
like
another
that. Let me
person.
write that down.
yeah. I'm good. Like you can go and be different with somebody, have a good time.
Come
But
on, be blessed.
right, you know. But yeah, no, I think people can change, and I think change is real. And I think it happens, right? But again, I think, you know, for a person who has been a victim of a person that's, I mean, that's always, and I think we've seen that, right? Or at least I've seen that to where, you know, even if a person is changing and doing better, like the person that has been, I guess, the victim of whatever domestic violence, like that thought process, that thing is still lingering
Mhm.
and it still affects the relationship. So it's still not truly like a healthy relationship because there's always doubt and that is coming back around, right? So I think that's something to always consider too.
Indeed, anything. And Crystal, anything you want to add to that about someone being able to change?
I'm gonna echo Dante's sentiments. Go on, change, but change with somebody else.
Yeah, for sure. So, so with that being the case, I guess, and Dante, you can start this time. That way you ain't got to follow up behind it. What does it look like for us to be good friends, good family members of those who may be going through this type of situation, right? So whether it be, we have a friend, loved one, family member that's being abused, or even on the other side of that, if we know that we have a friend, loved one, or family member that is abusing someone, what does it look like for us to be able to be a good friend, a good ally in those situations? What is our role? How do we help? What does that look like for us? So I'll let you start, Dante, and then we'll go around.
Last, how you,
Nah, you think, see, that was what you want to go last.
No, so I'll say, man, yeah. So if it's in somebody who's abusing somebody else, and if it's a brother or somebody I have a really close with, they got to see me. Like we just gonna have to see about it and have some real conversations about what's going on, but also, if need be, we got to deal with the situation because that's just not acceptable. Being who we are, who we're trying to be, yeah, that'll just never be okay, right? And yeah, that'll never be okay. We'll have to deal with it one way or another. We got to deal with it. And then for the victim, I mean, it's always how can I help get you out of the situation, right? Like who can, whether it's me calling, because I've called Latasha for a few people, say, what can I do? What we need to do to make this, because again, it's always the safe out too, right? Because you don't want it to turn into something that could be more detrimental. You don't want to make it obvious and what's going on, or so it's so much that goes into trying to assist and get a person out of a situation, especially if it is a very abusive situation to where it can go wrong real quick. So it's always reaching out to resources and just trying to figure out how can, what's the best way to help in that situation, right? Because obviously the answer is always let's get out, but let's get out can mean a whole lot more just problems for the person if they just do it instantly and right then and right there. So I think that's been my experience and my example. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Crystal, what do you think about that as far as how we can show up in those spaces for whether it be someone we know that is abusing someone or someone that's a loved one or a friend being abused?
In the last couple years, I've learned to be able to say, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that cue. You know, you want to be helpful, but like Dante said, that helpfulness can probably lead to greater issues. So I would love an opportunity to sit in a forum on how I could be helpful to the abuser, right? And same with the victim. Just because I think that that's the best way for them to leave a situation or execute, I don't know that that's best for them, and to be able to identify what they need as being necessary. Ultimately, I guess the listener, and what I do on a daily basis, learned and worked on a skill of being able to listen. And oftentimes, people will tell you what they need if you sit down in a listening mode and not necessarily in a judgmental mode. Prior to the last couple of years, I've been a solution maker, right? I've heard what I've heard, and then I'm all the way down at the end of the road trying to figure out a solution. And sometimes people just need to be able to talk through, and I need to be able to listen. And so, and if ever presented with that situation, that would be probably the first thing I do. Just listen.
Yeah. Well, you said you don't know, but you knew, because that's a great answer to me. And sometimes you just got to be there. I think that's a fantastic answer. For sure. So, Latasha, yeah. How do we show up in these spaces as friends, family members, loved ones?
Oh, well, now that's a personal one for me. I have someone in my family really close to me who has a long history of being abusive to multiple women, and constantly in and out of jail. And so I have to do what I know best, is try to be protective of those individuals. And it just, in doing that, is not taking up for that person. I don't but bail that person out. I don't even, I just kind of cut communication, but I work behind the scenes by saying, hey, this person is this person, and can you get them resources? Can you make sure they get counseling? Can you make sure they get, so it's kind of a workaround of sending someone to get them the help that they need, but not actually enabling that behavior. Because when you're dealing with a family member that's being the predator, the abuser in that situation, you still got to protect the community at the same time. And you don't want them to think, okay, what I'm doing is okay. And usually that's what happens. A great example is a lady just called me the other day. Her older son is actively in jail for murdering his girlfriend. Her younger son just picked up a new case, and she's just she's like, what do I do? Like, she was in a very, very abusive relationship. The husband tried to kill her, all this stuff, but never got help for the kids because she didn't know that it was going to affect them. Now she's trying to figure out, how can I protect this girl who wants to be with my son, and I'm afraid that he's now going to kill her, and I'm going to have two sons that have killed. And so what I told her to do was contact the DA's office and talk to them and say, hey, I have concerns. Can y'all get evaluation? Can y'all, give him some type of treatment in there? He may deny it, but you can do your part as a parent and don't bail him out. Because if you know that he's making these threats and you bail him out and so it's a sticky situation. But I think those are the best things that family can do, is try to get the person help, but not enable it, if that makes sense. As far as the victim, I always refer to the Women's Center or One Safe Place. Those are two places that do treatment exit plans, and they're professionals to sit down and say, okay, what's going on with you? Because they only give us surface. Victims only give us surface stuff, right? But when they sit down and talk with a professional, they really get to see what risk level that person is, and they're able to help them decide, okay, if you're going to leave or if you're not going to leave, and how you're going to do that. So I always recommend, referring them to the Women's Center or One Safe Place to have that exit plan in place, and so they can protect them and the children that may be involved in that situation.
Indeed. And so, yeah, and you kind of hit on this a little bit, Tasha, but Erica Powell, what up with it? Thanks for being with us. Put a question in the chat and said, what is the best approach? So we discussed this at work, and if the victim is letting us know at a home visit that they're in this situation, I guess what's the best approach to that? Because it may escalate real fast, especially if the abuser is present. I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, you definitely want to, if she said a home visit, so I'm assuming that's like a caseworker or something. You just want to notify like authorities or wait. I wouldn't make a big deal right then. I would get the victim by themselves, schedule them an appointment to the office or something like that, and then send them to the Women's Center or somewhere to have a plan put in place in a safety manner, whether, and they'll discover how their risk level, how deep that goes. And for everybody who's listening, if you witness some type of situation, please don't interject yourself, because it's so many innocent people that really just want to help and, jump in the middle of, a man and a woman or whoever having a dispute, and they end up hurt, or, and so please don't do that. Call the police, or if you know the person, maybe you can get someone to help you de-escalate, but be careful with that, because domestic violence can affect, I always say this, it affects the entire community. And so we try to jump in, especially guys, y'all, especially if you know the guy, you like, oh, let me jump in, but you got to be careful. Your number one priority needs to be going home at the end of the day. And so you have to understand that when someone is escalated at that point, they're not thinking clearly. And so you don't want to interject yourself in that.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. So, so we'll get ready to wrap our time here before we go around and kind of get some final sentiments from everyone. Tasha, I do want to at least give you the opportunity before we do that. And you've already done a little bit along our conversation to give some of those resources. I know you mentioned a couple of places that you would refer to and things like that. But if someone knows about a situation that's happening, in their family, in their vicinity, and with friends or whatever the case, or they themselves are abusing or being abused, what type of resources should people know about in order to be able to seek out help in those situations?
Well, people can go, and I'll put the information in the chat. They can go directly to Cheryl's Voice and send specifics in an email or a message, and then we can, recommend the most appropriate place. Typically, it's going to be either the Women's Center or One Safe Place, because both of those entities pretty much have everything that you need there. But I do like to know kind of more details so I can make sure that I make the right recommendation. So, because people get frustrated if they go one place and they get told, no, we don't have that. So I like to try to make sure that we kind of know exactly what they need and send them to the right place so they can get immediate assistance that way. So Cheryl's Voice, I will type it in the chat.
Yeah, you already know we're going to put that out there. Show that. So indeed. So yes, you absolutely will be able to get the website from us. Visit Cheryl's Voice, hit Latasha up, let her know, and she definitely can point you in the proper direction. So that's, of course, cherylsvoice.org is where you would go, if you need that information. So let's just go around real quick as we get ready to wrap this thing up. And so appreciative of the time y'all took out of y'all night to be here to educate our community. This is what we do. And so, Crystal, I'll come to you. And it really is just any final thoughts you want to leave with people about this topic, and just things you may feel that people need to know as we get ready to wrap.
Hey, I think Frontline did a great job in just putting it on the table, right? I think educating our community on what this looks like, what it feels like from different perspectives. And so I'm all about educating, because when we are educated, we do better. And we can share that education with others. And so I just would close with a thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the platform. Tasha, it was great to meet you. Thank you for all that you're doing in the community. And definitely to both Dante and Q, thank you for all that you guys are doing in bringing topics like this, topics that people don't want to talk about, putting them right there on the front line. And so thank you.
Indeed, indeed. Appreciate you more than you know, Crystal. Tasha, what say you? Go and get people some final sentiments.
It was great meeting you, Crystal. My brothers, I appreciate you guys thinking of me and having this conversation. Y'all know it's personal for me. I'm constantly talking about this topic every single day, not just in the month of October. And it's just something that I want our community to get better as far as being able to know that there's resources out there. I want to see our homicides decrease in Tarrant County. And so I'm really hoping next year we see less of our brown people killed by their intimate partner. We see less children that are witnessing such horrific acts. It's really what I'm hoping that this forum and with continual forums will do that. So it's great that so many people showed up to hear about this. Hopefully they share this. We have to keep the conversation going. And I appreciate y'all guys for having me.
Indeed, indeed. Well, we just incredibly indebted to you all the time. Even Dante said it a moment ago about, he can just pick up the phone and call you if he's seeing something going on. And that's just invaluable. You know what I mean? And so you definitely are part of us in every way. You are community frontline, and every way we can be a part of Cheryl's voice, you already know what it is. So really appreciate that. President, what you got for the people's man?
Yeah, so I know you're trying to rap, but that don't happen always.
You try to draw that door a little bit more?
Yeah, finna try to get a little more out of Tasha and Chris. So one thing that we kind of hit on, I think, the adult realm pretty good today, but we didn't really touch on the kids, right? And I think the kids and what the kids go through, whether it be witnessing, domestic violence in the home, or even, Tasha hit on it at birth, like before you're born, kind of in the womb, what that looks like, but also just young kids, elementary, middle school, high school kids, and what they're dealing with, and kind of how they're influenced by the culture, just, like all of that. So both of you, I would just ask y'all to take a couple more minutes to speak to kind of, what does that look like? What can happen? What is that conversation? Just dealing with kids, and I know I kind of open up a bag, but y'all go into the bag. Do your thing.
He gonna answer this loaded question.
Yep, all the way.
When you're talking about children, yes, it's and I'm glad that we did spend a lot of time on the adults, because they're the ones who's raising the children. And so if they don't get their stuff together and learn what's healthy and not healthy, then we still got all these kids. And so it really does start home, and what the parents and how they're raising and what they're allowing to transform into that household. But as far as the trauma that happens with kids, I'm a witness of that. I was born immediate surgery out the gate because my mom was under so much abuse and stress that I had to have immediate surgery then. I've had so many surgeries, I can't even begin to count how many I've had. I have so many health issues. I unfortunately cannot have children due to the childhood trauma. The list goes on. I have, brittle bones and all kinds of stuff that they've diagnosed me with. And I still live to tell the story, right? But it's still something that I can't get back. And that's something that children who witness abuse, even, and ladies, even if your child is in the womb and you think, okay, I got out, my kid is good, there's something going on. If you think about when someone is pregnant, you tell them to listen to classical music and remain calm and all that. Why do you do that? Because you know that they're listening, they're being affected, they're being impacted. And so if you are in this tumultuous relationship, your child is definitely affected. And so you want to take action, play therapy, early on, and then continue watching their growth and their progress. What we see in children is two different types. You have one that's kind of getting in trouble at school, seeking attention. And then you have the other one that was like me, which I thrive in success, because I didn't want anybody asking me questions or seeing that I was really suicidal every day. And I would try to be best, student council and all this stuff. And so we just have to pay more attention to our kids, but it does start with the parents. Crystal?
Just to piggyback, I think, Tasha, you did a great job on explaining that. But if it's difficult to see the red flags in a relationship or in a potential mate or spouse, it's probably going to be difficult to catch the red flags that show that a child is having some issues that are as a result of what they've seen. And so it's just going to really start with being intentional about who you connect yourself with. And what I do on a daily basis as a custody attorney is what I've been tagged as oftentimes, a custody attorney. You get to see the negative impacts that this has on the children. And as we know, we create, for the most part, parents create the dynamics and lifestyles for our children. For the most part, at some point in time, they get to the point in the age where they're going to make decisions on their own. But what you don't want to do is create a revolving door in the court system. Okay, so let's do our best to try to nip it in the bud. There are lots of resources out there, and don't be afraid to take on those resources. And like you said, play therapy, that's definitely something that the court system utilizes. Your churches, I mean, I think churches can play an integral part in assisting in that. And don't be afraid to ask. I think that's probably one of the biggest things that we deal with, and the fear. Go back to where we started in originally, just the fear and the embarrassment of it, but don't be afraid to ask. My heart definitely goes out to the children, and the impact and the things that they go through in their schools, just trying to make it through high school, etc. And to have an unstable home system creates unstable children, adults, and families. And so it starts here with Frontline and what you guys are doing and recognizing those issues. And so again, thank you guys for the opportunity and platform. Y'all doing a great job.
Great job.
We appreciate that. That was a good reason to open the door back up, D.
Open it up a little bit, right? All right,
so we needed that.
So I'll close out my. So I think, so for me, man, just to the guys, really to the guys on this subject, man, check in with each other, seek mental health, and be accountable to one another. You know what I'm saying? Like beyond anything, because again, this conversation tends to be a woman-led conversation, but men play a role in this very much so, whether as the abuser or the abused, whatever your role may be. We as men have to hold ourselves accountable to the role that we play, and to hold each other accountable to be better, to better the community. So that's my 2 cents on it.
I think it's a great 2 cents, man. Well spent. So I definitely give some of my closing thoughts here. As far as I'm concerned, they hit it beautifully. And one of the questions we touched on tonight was, can someone change? And I fall on the same side that everyone else did tonight, where I do believe that people can change. But what I also simultaneously believe is that behaviors are very difficult to change. And so what that really means is that if you're going to change something, think about if someone's alcoholic. Think about if someone is, there's so many things we can think about to where, someone can stop doing those things. But how much effort is it really going to take for them to really maintain a lifestyle of no longer doing that? So can it happen? Absolutely. But it's going to take love. It's going to take support. It's going to take, therapy, like we talked about tonight. It's going to take accountability. It's going to take people having to be in your business, check in on you. You're going to have to be real with somebody. Like these things, anytime we're trying to change something negative about any of our behaviors, the biggest way we're really going to be able to make that change is those around us helping us to make that change. It don't happen by ourselves. So you can't sit in the silo like, yeah, I know I did that one time, but shoot, I'm cool now. I'm never going to do that again. That ain't going to work. You need somebody. I don't know if it's your church, if it is a fraternity, if it is a sorority, if it is a mental health counselor, parents, grandparents, friends, cousins, brothers, neighbors, whoever it is, people are going to have to do this together in order for real change to be able to occur. And if you ain't got somebody you can be transparent with, if you don't have an inner circle, if you don't have somebody holding you accountable, it's so easy to slip back into the behaviors that we don't want to see ourselves doing, right? So that's definitely my 2 cents, is that don't get in this position where you think you can do it alone, whether you're the abuser, whether you're being abused. You're going to need people. So find the type of people that are really going to be able to be there with you and help you from this situation. So you can be one of the ones we're talking about that, you really changed. Things really are different now. So with that being the case, thank y'all so much for being with us this evening. Just a few announcements so you can know how to groove with us the rest of the week for sure. Tomorrow, we'll be right back on this platform again. It'll be Josh Rivers, who's doing fantastic work with our community and police relations division. Dante Williams will be here with him again, and we'll be talking to Kim Neal about the Office of Police Oversight for the city. So we definitely want you to be able to engage in that conversation, to ask questions, and to find out the latest that's happening with that department. So we'll be right back here again, 7 o'clock, for you to be able to have that conversation going on. Friday, We'll be at the Martin Luther King Center from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., the Fall Festival. So you got kids, bring them out there. You want to come out there and help and volunteer. We're just going to have a really good time, letting the kids have a good time at the Fall Festival from 6 to 9. You'll be able to see those. You'll be able to see the information for that on Community Frontlines platforms. Bring the kids out, bring yourself out. Let's have a good time at the Fall Festival at the Martin Luther King Center in the heart of Stop 6. And so, what else we got going on, Dig? I feel like I'm missing one. We got something else we need to be able to do. Keep putting something in there now. Walton Trunk or Treat. All right, that's through the Pillar Church. We're gonna have that on Saturday. On Saturday, have the Trunk or Treat at Walton. Put through the Pillar Church. So we love people to come out there as well. Do we know a time on that, Dig? I don't know if we know a time. We'll get it out there. If we don't know the time now, we'll get it out there. Just know it's gonna be happening coming up here on Saturday. So I think that's all that we got from the front line. Oh well, Dunbar Homecoming Parade is Saturday too. The Wildcats, make sure you get out there. Y'all know how we finna do. So yeah, so it's been a blast, ladies. We cannot thank y'all enough for your sisterhood, for your work you're doing in the community, being willing to sacrifice of your time. I know you've been in that restaurant forever, Crystal, so I know you're ready to go home. We did it for real again, man, and we will see y'all tomorrow for the conversation with Kim Neal right here with Community Frontline. Good night. God bless y'all.
Thank you.
Indeed.